Very somber day there at Arlington National Cemetery as we honor the veterans who have served our nation and made the ultimate sacrifice, and also honoring the veterans who continue to serve and are being honored on this Veterans Day. I want to bring in retired Marine combat fighter pilot Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath. Thank you for your service as well. I should note on this Veterans Day, I also want to note you're running as a Democrat to become the next senator from my home state of Kentucky. So thank you for your time today. I want to ask you about this new CNN exclusive reporting about a female Navy officer. And bear with me because I got to lay it out here. But she became the first woman to serve with SEAL Team 6 in the role of troop commander. This is the most elite SEAL leaders selected her for the new command. But her command was abruptly canceled with little explanation. And some sources are telling CNN that her command may have been pulled due to her gender and Secretary Hegseth's views on women in the military. A Pentagon official familiar with the situation said the command was pulled because the Navy captain wasn't herself a SEAL and that Hegseth was not involved in this. But her story encapsulates what many in the military now fear as a culture of misogyny permeating the U.S. Armed Forces under Hegseth. Our team has spoken to several sources who have relayed that. What is your reaction?
Well, it doesn't surprise me, right? This is a Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, whatever you want to call it now, who wrote an entire book or had an entire few chapters on how insecure he was with serving with women in the military. So it's not surprising. They've fired lots of qualified men and women without any justification. He has lied about standards in the military, saying that combat standards were somehow lowered for women. They were never lowered for women. Even in ground combat positions, we always had one standard. And by the way, that was important for women to make sure that we always had one standard. And so it's not surprising. And unfortunately, this is what's happening right now. So while we honor veterans and we honor our military, and I'm glad to see the president at Arlington National Cemetery today, the policies that they're enacting are very harmful to those men and women in particular who serve.
Yeah, and critics say that some of these policies could discourage women from pursuing leadership roles. I'm curious what you're hearing from service members and advocacy groups.
Yeah. And I read through your article, and it was interesting. The administration says that lots of women are excited to serve under the strong leadership of Secretary Hegseth. Look, I know no women in the military who are excited to serve under Pete Hegseth. They know that he's unqualified, and they're going to serve with honor and distinction. But right now, what's happening, everybody sees it, and it does make a culture of fear within the military because you're not getting the best people rise to the top. Now, unfortunately, your gender it can be used against you.
And you are right. Our team did reach out to the Pentagon, Brown and Keeler, Haley Britsky, just some of the reporters on this. And the Pentagon said that, yes, the women are excited to serve under the strong leadership of Hegseth. That pointed to recruitment numbers, saying recruitment of women is up, although the experts we spoke to said the numbers right now actually reflect the women who signed up last year before President Trump took office. So it remains to be seen moving forward what that recruitment picture really looks like under Hegseth. In your view, have previous administrations ever compromised standards to get more women in the military? Because as you know, I know you pointed out it was gender neutral in terms of the training and everything, but has anything ever been compromised for more women?
No. Look, the military is a tough place to be. It's not a rose garden, and it's not a rose garden for a reason. There are, when I joined, there were about maybe 10 to 13% women. Now at the services academies, there's about 30%. And that's because over time, women rise through the ranks, and other women, young women, see that. And so what you get is you get the best talent going forward. It's not easy for women, but what we want in our military is the best people, because our military exists to fight and win the nation's wars, and we want the best people in those positions. In my experience in 24 years in the military, no standards have ever been lowered for me or for any of my fellow women who served.
I've done extensive reporting on sexual harassment and assault in the U.S. Coast Guard and how the U.S. Coast Guard for years covered up their findings around that. And I'm wondering if you have any concerns about this environment and whether those kinds of allegations perhaps won't be taken as seriously or investigated. I know in our reporting from the team, that was a big concern from women because there are, Pete Hegseth has taken steps to pull back whistleblower protections and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what Pete Hegseth has done is he's cut back on the sexual assault reporting process, making it less likely that someone would come forward with allegations. That is a real problem. He's also done things like terminate the advisory committee on women in the military. And what that does, it's called DACAWITS. And what they were doing is simply making life better for women in the military, making it more equitable, making the culture better. Because again, you want to keep the best talent. So I'm very worried about that. I think a lot of women in the military are very worried about that. But you know what? We're pretty tough. And those women who are in the military are much tougher than Pete Hegseth.
There's a lot of tough women in the military, that is for sure. I also want to ask you before I let you go about this breaking news this morning, just to get your reaction. The UK is suspending some intelligence sharing with the U.S. over its boat strikes on alleged narco terrorists. At this point, the administration, I believe at last count, has killed 76 people. They say they're part of the drug cartels. They have not released the actual evidence to prove that. What is your reaction to the UK pulling back on this intelligence sharing?
Yeah, the most important thing people need to realize is this is our closest ally saying they do not want to be complicit in these actions. And why? Because they know it's wrong. What we are doing there is wrong. If these folks are criminals, they need to be treated like criminals and given due process and in a manner that is of law enforcement. If we are at war, and I've been to war, if we are at war, we need to go to Congress. The president needs to go to Congress and ask for a declaration of war or an authorization to use military force. That is what we do in the United States of America. And that is why the UK is saying, hey, we're not going to be a part of this. I think it's a wake-up call to all Americans to look and see what's happening down there and make sure that we hold our Congress and our president accountable.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel and Kentucky Senate candidate Amy McGrath, thank you so much for your time. And again, happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.